this commentary video to discuss that what we need to focus on in 2025. Video game companies is in a downward spiral in 2024, with the trend falling into the live service model. Creating these videos takes time, and also, I sincerely sorry for the late uploads these days, and I'd like to specially say thanks to the new subscribers. Thank you all very much. For your support seriously does help me keep going. Now coming back to present day. Just a friendly reminder that who are watching this right now, the Dead Space remake, developed by Motive Studios and published by EA Games, revitalizes the 2008 survival horror classic. It stays true to the original's spine-chilling atmosphere while integrating modern gaming technologies to enhance immersion and storytelling. Released on January 27, 2023 for the PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. The game was praised for its faithful recreation and innovative graphical updates. Fully rebuilt from the ground up with modern graphical fidelity, featuring ray tracing, realistic lighting, and highly detailed character and environment designs. With the new 3D spatial audio and revamped sound design amplify the game's iconic horror scary ambience. While staying true to the original storyline, the remake introduces additional lore and dialogue to flesh out characters like Isaac Clarke and deepen the connection to the Dead Space universe. The gameplay features a seamless, zero loading screen experience, thanks to fast M.2 SSDs in modern consoles. Even the enhanced dismemberment mechanics and improved combat interactions add a more visceral and satisfying gameplay experience. The game originated in a vastly different era, a time when EA and other major development studios were relentlessly churning out DLCs and action-packed titles. Games like Call of Duty and Battlefield dominated the market, marking a period that felt disheartening for anyone who wasn't into that style of gaming. It's almost certain that EA, in an effort to appeal to this audience, steered Dead Space 3 toward a more action-oriented direction, sacrificing its horror-driven roots in the process. While I don't outright despise Dead Space 3, I can't help but wish for a complete remake. One that reimagines the story and restores the atmospheric tension and terror that define the series. Personally, I just want to see something fresh from the franchise, be it Dead Space 4 or a spin-off unrelated to the Isaac story. The remake was fantastic, but I'd like to see Motive be able to flex their creative muscles more instead of remaking the same games every decade after decade. I think Gears of War did a similar thing on its transition to the next console generation. We had Gears 1 to 3 on Xbox 360, and then there was a long gap where people thought the franchise might have died or withered. They did a remake of Gears 1, showing what the series could be like with more powerful hardware, and then followed it up with Gears 4 sequel, which continued the story from what seemed to be the final ending. But the truth has to be told. Sadly, we are not going to be getting any new Dead Space sequel in 2025. Because, as of making this new video, it was confirmed by the Dead Space creator that EA rejected their plans for the fourth game. Now, if you ask me, honestly, horror games are not my cup of tea, horror games aren't that successful, and the Dead Space remake was considered a bit of a flop as it didn't really bring in new players into the series. EA more than likely was using that as a lifeline rope to see if it was viable to go back to it, and the answer was a decently resounding no from the fans. Even the newly released Silent Hill 2 did not do well. The reality is that horror's just a really hard sell for people, only small group of people. Like these kind of genre, and it's why it's hard to get a AAA quality horror game outside of Capcom's Resident Evil remakes. The old Dead Space creators also tried to copy it by making a new Dead Space copy of their own, which was Callisto Protocol, which was a disaster. The OG Dead Space one back then was already a masterpiece. If you ask me, this is a completely my opinion. They very well could just continue with what they left off. I guess I just prefer to see what Motive does with a reworked narrative and canon. Yes, I know, making a big budget AAA games will take likely 4 to 5 years to make these days. But who wants to play the same game with only new graphical improvement without adding any new additional mechanics or the story lore in the remakes? And also, I know, rushing the game, which clearly lacks anything new to offer us, in the first place is going to make things worse. This is largely true, but they mostly have the trump card of OG Dead Space 1 and its IP with them. The development of the Dead Space remake benefits significantly from its nature as a reimagining of the original game. Since the foundational structure, including core gameplay mechanics, narrative arcs, and level designs, is already established from the original release. Much of the initial pre-production phase is streamlined. This eliminates the need for extensive conceptualization and design work typically required for a new intellectual property. Additionally, the developers are leveraging the Frostbite engine, which was already utilized in other EA projects, providing a robust foundation for creating high-quality visuals and physics systems. Many of the assets, including models, animations, and environmental designs, have been reworked or enhanced rather than built from scratch. This approach, coupled with the lessons learned and tools refined from their previous remake experiences, has drastically reduced the overall development timeline and resource allocation. The excitement around potential remakes for Dead Space 2 and Dead Space 3 is palpable, but we must consider the risks that come with such ambitious undertakings. The decision to remake Dead Space 2 next, while enticing, could result in either a major success or a catastrophic failure. If the remake fails, despite all the hope and nostalgia, it could bury the franchise for a second time, effectively ending its revival. We'd gain a fantastic remake but no meaningful conclusion to the series. Is that truly what fans want? Even if the Dead Space 2 remake succeeds, it naturally paves the way for a Dead Space 3 remake, a game widely regarded as the black sheep of the franchise. Although it has its merits, Dead Space 3 never resonated with the majority of the fan base due to its controversial design choices and tonal shift. Motive Studios would then face a dilemma: either heavily improve the existing game or reimagine it entirely, much like Capcom did with the Resident Evil 3 remake. However, remaking Dead Space 3 comes with significant risks. As the game already carries a negative stigma, a potential failure of its remake could result in history repeating itself, with the series once again meeting an untimely demise. Consider this. Motive's Dead Space remake has already laid groundwork that ties into Dead Space 3's lore, making a total reimagining unlikely. Attempting to fix Dead Space 3 while staying true to its narrative roots would essentially require creating a new game altogether, and even with the best intentions, the remake would not be immune to criticism. If it fails, we'd be left with no closure, just another franchise in limbo. Timeline-wise, the outlook isn't great. If Motive's Iron Man game launches around 2025 or 2026, we wouldn't see a Dead Space 2 remake until 2028 or 2029 at the earliest. A Dead Space 3 remake could then be pushed as far back as 2030 or beyond. That's nearly a decade of waiting for closure. And if that remake doesn't succeed, it's game over. Again. How many of us have been waiting for a proper ending since Dead Space 3? That's the real question here. Wouldn't it be safer, and perhaps more satisfying to see Motive focus on delivering Dead Space 4 next, rather than diving headfirst into the remake cycle? A fresh entry could tie up the franchise's loose ends, while remasters of Dead Space 2, Dead Space 3, and even Dead Space Extraction could tide fans over. Alternatively, starting with Dead Space 4 first, and revisiting remakes afterward, might strike a better balance, ensuring both innovation and fan service. While the current hype surrounding remakes is understandable, it's crucial to weigh the consequences. As they say, those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. It's worth asking ourselves, what's more important, reliving the past or ensuring the future of the Dead Space? As we wrap up, it's clear that the return of the Dead Space franchise has reignited our collective passion for this iconic series. While there's always a lingering worry that a misstep could lead to another unfortunate demise, the potential for success feels stronger than ever. A remake of Dead Space 2 seems like a safe bet, a surefire hit that could pave the way for something even bolder. And if we ever see a reimagined Dead Space 3, it could serve as the perfect opportunity to deliver the satisfying conclusion fans have been craving, essentially achieving what many hope Dead Space 4 might someday do. No matter what comes next, whether it's a Dead Space 2 remake, a continuation of the story, new novels, or animated films, I'm just thrilled to see this franchise alive and thriving once again. The excitement is real, and I'm here for every moment of it. Thank you all for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What are you hoping for next from Dead Space? Until next time, see you guys in the next one. Peace out.
With or without you. Isaac, it's me. It's all falling apart here. I can't believe what's happening.
Nicole?